Hi, I'm Norm, and this is Strangely Canadian. In today's video, 10 strange tales from Prince Edward Island. PEI is the smallest province in the country, but the most densely populated. It is the birthplace of Confederation. In September 1864, the island hosted the Charlottetown Conference, which was the first steps in the process of forming the country of Canada. Prince Edward Island is mainly known for the red-headed orphan Anne of Green Gables. Here are 10 strange tales from the island province. Number 1. The Northumberland Strait Ghost Ship. The Northumberland Strait separates Prince Edward Island, or PEI as it is known, from the mainland. You can cross the strait via the Confederation Bridge to New Brunswick, or you can cross at Woods Island to Caribou, Nova Scotia via a car ferry. If you're crossing the strait on a fall evening just before a big storm, you just may see a fiery schooner sailing on the waves. The sightings began in 1786 and continue to this very day. In 1900, after spotting the flaming ship, a group of sailors in the Charlottetown harbor took a rowboat and tried to mount a rescue effort. But as they approached the ship, it disappeared. There are many theories as to what the ghost ship may be. Some say that it is the Young Teaser, but that ship was burned near Mahone Bay, where Oak Island is, in Nova Scotia. Other legends point to a ship full of Scottish settlers that were traveling to the New World, or Acadians escaping from the expulsion heading for Ile Saint-Jean, which was the original name of Prince Edward Island when it was a French colony, as well as many other theories. Number 2. The Phantom Bellringers. On Friday, October the 7th, in 1859, the steamer Fairy Queen was on its way to Charlottetown. Early that morning, a man living near the Kirk of St. James heard the church bells ringing and went with a neighbor to investigate. The bell rang 8 times, and when the men went inside, they saw 3 women, all dressed in white. Then the doors swung shut behind them. The Fairy Queen never arrived. The ship sank, killing 8 passengers, 3 of them women from the church's congregation. Did these 3 women's spirits transport to the church to ring the bells to signify their demise? We will never know. Des Blois Trainwreck. In February of 1932, a train got stuck in heavy snow at Handron Crossing, a place infamous for snowdrifting. The crew of 24 struggled against the storm to dig out the train as darkness fell. Men were posted up the tracks to alert any oncoming trains of the one that was stuck. But around 1:30 a.m., they decided to leave their post, assuming no trains were coming. As they walked back, they heard a train coming, building up speed as if anticipating a heavy snowdrift. The moving train collided with the other with such force that it split the coach car in half. 4 men were killed and another had both legs amputated. The train tracks are no longer there, but ever since the accident, people have reported hearing a train whistle along that area of track. Others report seeing a ball of light coming down the track at great speed. Some say the light is from the train's engineer, who perished in the crash, searching for survivors. Now, the next few stories took place at the University of Prince Edward Island. I didn't want to include so many stories from the same location, but I couldn't decide which ones to omit. I did, however, omit a couple. One of a helpful chemistry professor whose name is on the building of chemistry, and the other one, mysterious touching in the library. Number 4, the Dalton Hall Knocker. Dalton Hall used to be a residence, one with a very strict curfew policy. On a Thursday night, a male student was caught outside in a snowstorm after curfew, and the resident Don refused to let him in. That young man froze to death a few feet from the door, and his body wasn't found until Sunday afternoon. Nobody was punished over the incident, and his death was attributed to misadventure. A few months later, students began to hear a panicked knock at the front door. When they investigated, nobody was there, and there were no footprints in the snow near the front door. Now, this incident increased over the next few months. Near the anniversary of the death, a student who opened the door reported being grabbed by the shoulders by something that he could not see. He quickly slammed the door shut, and the knocking began again. Though the frequency of the reports have slowed down over the last 8 odd decades since the student's death, it is still heard to this very day. The sealed room of Maine. Main building is the oldest building on the campus. On the top floor, in an east corner, there is an office that nobody has been in since the late 1940s. It was in November 1942 when a professor of history, distraught over his failed marriage, hung himself from a ceiling beam in his office. Now, several people heard the sound of the drop and rushed to find his body, all of them reporting the grisly expression of hopeless rage on his face. The day after the suicide, one of the building workers assigned to clean the office reported feeling a presence in the room and a feeling of being watched. When he turned around, he felt strong hands grasp his neck and begin to squeeze. He managed to get out of the office and refused to ever go near it again. Over the next few years, several attempts to occupy the office ended in failure, as all the new occupants only lasted a few months at the most, all of them reporting increasingly violent, unexplained phenomena, including a few attempted strangulations. Eventually, by the end of the 1940s, it was decided to simply board up the office and try to forget about it. However, students and faculty in the classrooms and offices below and adjacent to the sealed office sometimes still report hearing banging and scraping noises. Floating home in a coffin. Charles Coughlin was born on PEI in the 1940s. He wanted to become an actor and move away. His father told him if he left, he would never be welcome back on the island again. If you're a parent, you know telling your child that they can't do something will make them want to do it even more. Charles left the island, becoming a successful actor, and traveled the world. On November the 27th, 1899, he dropped dead on stage in Galveston, Texas, and he was buried in a nearby cemetery. 1 year later, a devastating hurricane hit the area, and the surging waters unearthed the coffin and washed it out to sea. Over the next 8 years, it floated around the tip of Florida, up the Atlantic Ocean, around Nova Scotia, and into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, ending up on the shores of Prince Edward Island. Now, a metal plate inside of the casket bore the name of the deceased, and everyone knew that Charles Coughlin had returned home. Now there is documentation that says that he never was born on the island, but sometimes documents can be wrong. Frightened to death. Peter McIntyre was originally from Scotland, but moved to the island in the 1700s to seek a better life. He started a farm not far from Charlottetown in Scotch Fort. One night he decided to go to the general store where locals would gather to talk of the news and other happenings in the area. One of the men spoke of rumors of strange lights in the cemetery. McIntyre, being a man who did not take much stock in superstition, laughed off the rumor. The men began to pressure him into proving he was not afraid. They gave him a pitchfork and said if he put the pitchfork in the middle of the cemetery that very night, they would give him a pouch of tobacco. He set off to win his prize. The next morning, the farmers went to McIntyre's farm, but they could not find him. They then headed to the cemetery, and off in the distance they could see the pitchfork sticking from the ground in the middle of a grave. As they approached, calling Peter's name, there was no answer. But then they were horrified to find Peter McIntyre's body laying on top of a grave with a fearful look in his eyes, and the pitchfork staking his coat to the ground. Someone or something stuck the pitchfork into his coat after he died, supposedly from fright. The ghostly guest appearance. Our next story takes place in the historic town hall, which became King's Theatre. It suffered major fire damage in 1983, and now King's Playhouse stands in its place. The theatre has had a creepy guest for many years, and this guest has received the name of Captain George. Now, this spirit is a bit of a prankster. He appears wearing an old-fashioned military greatcoat and carrying a lantern. He is known to suddenly appear on stage or behind the scenes, giving cast and crew members quite a fright. He is also known to grab the ankles of theater goers. To try to appease Captain George, the seat has permanently been reserved for his ghost to watch the shows instead of interfering in them. Number 9. Maybe a ghost? James Hayden Fletcher didn't believe in ghosts. He recalled as a youth being frightened by the stories men would tell at his father's sawmill. But as he grew older, he learnt that most of the tales were from Irish and Scottish folklore. Even though he did not believe in ghosts, he was cautious if he approached a suspicious place late at night. One evening he was walking past an old graveyard when he noticed the shape of a man all dressed in white at the gates of the graveyard. Most people would run in fear, but James did not. Instead, he looked right at the figure and yelled, "How do you do?" He was relieved to hear the voice of a human respond to him. He was still so startled that he said he could hardly walk, but he did walk, and as fast as he could. Later, he claimed the man he saw was crazy Donald Gordon of North Perth. Apparently, Donald Gordon, the patriarch of a large family, had grown a little mentally ill in his old age. He would wear strange robes and perform mysterious religious rituals. The problem with this is that according to records, Donald Gordon had passed away before James Fletcher reported seeing him that night. Number 10. West Point Serpent. The indigenous Mi'kmaq people warned the first Europeans who came to PEI of a gigantic snake that swam upon the waters offshore of the Big Island. Now, it didn't take long for the settlers to encounter the serpent, a 12 to 24 meter long tube-like monster with short reddish-brown dark fur and the head of a horse. Its body was made of humps that rose and fell in the water as it moved. In one report, a man and his uncle were fishing on a boat near the West Point Lighthouse in 1980 when an 18 to 24 meter serpent approached them. The creature simply raised its horse-like head from the water, staring at them briefly, and then swam away. There you have it, 10 strange tales from the small province of Prince Edward Island. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time when I bring you more stories that are strangely